we're going to talk about the physiology of fear, or the body's fear response. And so, as discussed in the previous module, we become fearful when we have an encounter with something that we believe can hurt us. And our body prepares to either freeze, fight, or run away, which is otherwise known as the freeze, fight, or flight response. This is the beginning of what is often referred to as the fear response cycle. So, for example, if you were camping out in the woods at night and all of a sudden heard a twig snap, you might think to yourself, what the heck was that? This is the first stage of the fear response cycle, and it's really designed to prepare you for self-defense. This reaction is a rational and adaptive built-in response for self-preservation. This happens to every living organism that feels a threat to its safety. So, what happens when we become afraid? Well, first, our body gets prepared for self-defense. Our heart rate and breathing rate increase because our body requires more oxygen to fight or flee from the feared object or situation. As a result, we tend to breathe less diaphragmatically, which is the area where our belly is, and more thoracically, the area of our chest, in an effort to enrich our blood with oxygen while discarding the carbon dioxide through rapid exhalation or breathing. Our muscles become stronger in order for us to defend ourselves by either fighting or running away. Our eyesight and hearing improves. We get a phenomenon called tunnel vision, where you find that the only thing you can see is the object that you believe can hurt you. People often say that when they were afraid, they could have heard a pin drop. So we focus only on one thing, the feared object, and ignore almost everything else. We may experience gastrointestinal reactions, such as butterflies in the stomach, queasiness, vomiting, or diarrhea. Our hands and feet may get cold, and our face may start to flush. Sometimes our palms might start to perspire, or we experience tingling or numbness in our hands and lips and other parts of our bodies. And adrenaline, which I'll be talking about shortly, is pumped into our bodies as we prepare to protect ourselves. It is here where we use this energy to try to solve or neutralize the problem. We have the choice to fight the problem or run away from it. An important thing to note here are that these physiological responses will happen regardless of whether the fear is real or imagined. So, as the previous example of hearing that twig snap in the woods demonstrates, the body doesn't know if the twig is snapping because of a harmless bunny rabbit or an angry bear protecting her cub. Perhaps you might even have the image of a killer bunny rabbit that's snapping that twig. Some might even sit in the comfort of their own home, where just thinking about this situation may produce any of these physiological responses. The point is that the fears associated with whatever is causing that twig to snap could be real or imagined, and your body will respond the same way regardless. Again, this response is universal to all living creatures and is hardwired into our bodies in order for us to survive. Now, this is not to say that confronting a hungry bear in the woods is something you shouldn't necessarily be afraid of. Although in common, bears have hurt humans, especially when the bear is protecting her cubs. Your fear as to the danger you face should you run into that bear is perfectly rational. However, the problem with this response is that you may be assuming that the sound of a snapping twig is the result of a bear coming to eat you. This may be an incorrect assumption, considering all the other possibilities as to what may be causing that sound. Although your fear reaction is real, it may be irrational. Fearful reactions we have to certain objects or situations, whether rational or not, can be incredibly difficult to change. Maintaining our fears and anxiety often leaves us feeling exhausted, hopeless, and as though the only thing we can do is avoid the object or situation altogether. How our fears and anxieties are acquired, maintained, and avoided will be discussed in detail in the next module. So, to understand what happens to our bodies when we experience fear, it's best if we begin with a brief discussion about our central nervous system. The central nervous system is comprised of two subsystems, the musculoskeletal system and the autonomic nervous system. The musculoskeletal system is, for our purposes, probably the easiest to understand. This system provides the support, form, stability, and movement of the body. It's comprised of the body's bones, muscles, cartilage, tendons, ligaments, joints, and other connective tissues. And aside from the many details about the system, which there are a ton, probably the most important take-home point here in our discussion is that the musculoskeletal system, and more specifically the tension and movement of the muscles, is something you have direct control of. So, for example, if I asked you to lift your arm up above your head or stretch your leg out in front of you, do you think you'd be able to do it? Yes, you would, because you'd simply tell yourself to do so, and you would just do it. This is the only part of your nervous system that you have direct control of. The second part of our central nervous system is called the autonomic nervous system. It controls visceral functions like heart rate, respiratory rate, digestion, salivation, perspiration, and other functions. The autonomic nervous system differs from the musculoskeletal system in that it functions largely beyond the conscious level and therefore is not in your direct control. So, in another example, let's say I asked you to start sweating profusely or to increase your pulse rate by 20 beats per minute. Do you think you'd be able to do either of these things directly? If you answered no, you are correct. You would not be able to do either of these directly. In order to increase your heart rate and to start sweating, you'd have to either go run around the block a few times or maybe go look at something you're afraid of, like that growling bear or killer bunny rabbit. The fact is that you have no control over this part of your nervous system. This is the part of the nervous system that is largely responsible for the sensations you experience when you are either directly in the presence or imagine being in the presence of a feared object. So here's how it works. This part of the brain is the musculoskeletal center. Think of this part of your brain as the self-control center. Just like the example of raising your arm above your head demonstrates, you tell yourself to do this, and your brain sends the command to your muscles. You largely control this part of your brain. Located behind and below the musculoskeletal center is the autonomic nervous system section of your brain. This part of your brain controls all of your senses and is not under your direct control. The autonomic nervous system evolves and develops based on a lot of what you learn, and it influences what you perceive. Then we have the master controller, the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is often referred to as the emotional nerve center of the autonomic nervous system. It serves as the link between the brain and the body. It acts as the virtual train station, if you will, between the musculoskeletal system and the autonomic nervous system. When you see something that you perceive as threatening or dangerous, whether it's real or imagined, your autonomic nervous system becomes activated. The hypothalamus is alerted that danger is present and responds by delivering adrenaline to the muscles, also that the body can respond to the danger by either fighting it or running away from it. Remember that fight or flight response? What's important to remember here is that the hypothalamus does not necessarily listen to you. It listens to other things according to a survival map that is located in your brain that supports life above all else. The hypothalamus doesn't care if you want to fly on an airplane so you can attend your business meeting or go on your family vacation. It's solely focused on maintaining your survival. It behaves very concretely in that if you see something or think about something that you perceive as frightening, threatening, or harmful, it simply responds to that. Now here's perhaps the most important part of our discussion. The hypothalamus evaluates how active your muscles are and what your muscles are doing. So if your muscles are active or tense, the hypothalamus assumes that they need to be so that you can protect yourself, and therefore delivers more adrenaline to your muscles so that they can keep working. Does that make sense? So the continuous flow of adrenaline to your muscles will cause the fear reaction to continue. So although adrenaline is there to help you, one of the side effects of it is that it makes you feel afraid. So to be clear, when we're talking about the physiological response to fear, perception starts with the autonomic nervous system. It says, I see or anticipate danger here. And the hypothalamus responds by delivering energy to the muscles in the form of adrenaline. Adrenaline is released at the command of the hypothalamus, and what you feel as a side effect of the adrenaline is fear. This feeling of fear is a motivator for you to do something to protect yourself. It is at this point that muscle metabolism, meaning how active your muscles are, largely controls your anxiety after perception. If you feel like you simply can't control your level of fear when you're around an airplane, part of the explanation for this is that your autonomic nervous system is speaking up out of turn at probably a very inconvenient time. You have a disagreement going on inside of your body when you feel afraid, when you think you shouldn't feel afraid, when you're saying to yourself, I know that this is not dangerous, or I shouldn't be afraid of this, but I just can't help feeling this way. So you may be asking yourself by this point, is there anything that can be done about this autonomic nervous system? Is there any way we can gain control over it? Especially considering how automatic it reacts to objects or situations that you're afraid of. Well, the answer is yes. The autonomic nervous system is controlled by how we interpret what we perceive as happening through our senses. So when we encounter something that we believe could hurt us, the freeze, fight, or flight survival mechanism is triggered. But situations that cause fear depend on whether we perceive them to be dangerous. Some people can ride roller coasters and think that they're fun, while others are petrified of them. But we can learn to change how we perceive situations. And a second way that we can gain control over the autonomic nervous system is by contracting or relaxing our muscles. As discussed previously, if your muscles are tense, your hypothalamus interprets this as, hey, I must be in trouble here. I must need to either fight or run away from something. So I better deliver more adrenaline to my muscles to make sure that this can happen. And keep in mind that a side effect of the adrenaline is fear. So conversely, if your muscles begin to relax, regardless of how afraid you might feel, your hypothalamus interprets this as, wait a minute, I guess I'm not in danger after all, so I can stop sending that fear hormone, adrenaline, to my muscles. And the result of this, particularly the physiological results, will be a reduction in the various symptoms that you experience when you're feeling afraid. So to review, we have two ways to affect our fear response: changing our perceptions about the situation and learning to relax our muscles. Your knowledge about the autonomic nervous system will help you know what to do when you find yourself feeling afraid before and during your flight in the airplane. We don't normally attribute our muscle activity to the sustenance of our anxiety. Rather, we usually think our muscle tension as a symptom of our anxiety. We often think to ourselves, if I could just relax emotionally, then I could relax my muscles. In essence, we feel out of control. Just remember that although the mind talks to the body talks back to the mind. It is what you know about the environment that you're in and what you do in that environment that determines your emotional reactions. As you learn, your perceptions will begin to change. The intensity of your fear will become progressively less as it follows a learning curve. As you continue working through the modules that follow, start noticing the times when you feel your muscles become tense. You can start to practice relaxing your muscles during these times and notice what happens as a result to any anxiety that you might be experiencing. I'll see you in the next module.